welcome to the third. No, this is the fourth now.
That's the third.
We did one together. You did. Oh, okay. This is the. No, we did one
No,
together.
no, we didn't do
Oh,
one
you did
together.
the first one.
Yeah, I did the first one, you did the second one, and now we're coming together for the third.
Oh, that's fucking awesome. Right on. What a journey. So welcome to the third session, the third meeting of the 10th insight. And in three reads, I'm blown away already. It was funny because last week I kind of struggled a little bit with some of the loftiness, some of the uh fantasy, for lack of better word. I had a little bit of internal struggle until afterwards when it was sinking in and the depth of the intention and the depth of the conversation that there was being had in the book. So it was kind of a neat little space for me last week after reading and doing it by myself was a little bit more complicated for me because I'm just reading. I don't have a lot of conversation without the conversation between us.
Mhm.
So it was a little harder. And then the fantasy and the loftiness kind of tried to eat my
Yeah.
lunch a little bit until I dove into it.
What specifically are you speaking of regarding fantasy?
Well, I remember watching the movie of the Celestine Prophecy, and towards the end, when the you would see like the faint glow of the people and the in and
Mhm.
out of the
Right,
what's
they'd start vibrating their energy higher to where they're
yes,
not visible in the physical realm anymore.
yes, and the visions from that was like tenfold in the reading last week because
Mhm.
all of a sudden it was everything and everybody was in that space of being visible and not being visible and so it just felt very sci-fi-ish, if that's a probably not the right word. It was more fantasy than sci-fi, but
Gotcha.
that's kind of what I'm referencing for me. Like it's a the spiritual world is interesting on that level for me.
Mm.
I struggle with the loftiness, I don't know. It,
Yeah, you can't see it type of deal, or you haven't experienced it type of deal. It used to be for me too until fucking, I don't know. I guess really my teachers that are not in this physical dimension started coming to me. That and my mountain. Those two experiences just kind of like, fuck it, yeah, absolutely. I totally understand like what they're saying. That's a thing, and I can fucking see it. Like yeah, 100%. Um,
I love listening to your talk and conversations about your teachers and for me it's I don't want to use the word jealousy, but it kind of like what we were talking about earlier in the week about it, they all know what's going on and I'm like clueless kind of thing in regards to whether it's mental, you know, mental disease or whatever the conversation is. Like the rest of the world has the playbook and I don't. Why am I missing?
oh, what is somebody not telling me?
Yeah, what is somebody not telling me? And I kind of get some of that when I hear people like that night that uh Kylie was light speaking.
Yeah.
So I started Googling it and I'm trying to wrap my head around it because it reminded me of like the tongues in Christian church where I felt it was so fake at the time.
Yeah.
And the deeper I go, I'm trying to break that fakeness, but I haven't experienced it. I've watched it. I've been that close. I've seen it in real life, but I haven't experienced it. So there is a little bit of, yeah, is it
Yeah,
real?
and it's one of those like you're not going to experience it until you open yourself to it. Like the light language or the speaking in whatever language you want to name it or whatever words come out or just allowing yourself to like or like my teachers. it took me a long time to like be okay enough in myself with it myself to even speak it to anybody. And they've been with me for years, 4 years. Um, at least since I was 30, for the last 9 years is the like first time I can remember them being with me in meditation or whatever it is. Like I both of them, because there's a man and a woman. And um they're figments of my imagination, or it's just a vision that I have in meditation, or do whatever. But then the more I allowed myself to like calm and experience them, and then they would give me these practices or these ceremonies or this guidance or explain something to me or whatever it is, or even like I don't even know. Just the more comfortable I got with them, and they're like, yeah, yeah, they're my teachers. And then hearing other people speak, like, oh shit, I'm not the only one. Okay.
Yeah.
Right. With light language, like that one, like I practiced it for a while and it's super fucking awkward and uncomfortable because you're literally just letting the fucking things come. It doesn't like for me, like whenever I've practiced it, like it's this like understanding of like the essence of what's being said, but I wouldn't be able to tell you in like this is this. It's not this translatable thing. Like when I say that te amo, right? In Spanish, in English, that means I love you. It's not that,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
you know.
I think it just hit me, the ego side of it, because what I just saw was yesterday when I did that yoga practice at the lake. It was the first time I felt comfortable practicing yoga in public, like in a public place where,
Oh.
like, and so that's this may be connected to ego. I
Mm,
don't want no one to hear those voices. I don't want anyone. Ooh, see the little breakthroughs.
yeah.
Ooh, ooh, ooh. All right, we should read.
Right. Let's do it. I'll go ahead and start off if you don't mind.
And of course, the title of the fucking chapter. Go ahead,
Yeah.
no, please.
Chapter 3, Overcoming the Fear.
You stopped like two paragraphs before the end of the chapter.
I saw that. Well, because I can't find the book, so I'm on my phone.
Oh, gotcha.
And so like I didn't like when I realized I was like, oh, come on, Jen. It was so funny. Um, all right. Shaking off the vertigo, I became aware that I was back at the falls. Across from me, under a rocky overhang, was my pack, lying exactly where I had placed it earlier. I looked around. No sign of Will. What had happened? Where did he go? According to my watch, less than an hour had passed since Will and I had entered the other dimension, and as I thought about the experience, I was struck with how much love and calm I had felt and how little anxiety until now. Now everything around me seemed dull and muted. Warily, I walked over and picked up my pack, fear welling up in my stomach. Sensing too much exposure in the openness of the rocks, I decided to walk back into the hills to the south until I could decide what to do. When I had crested the first hill and started down the slope, I spotted a small man, perhaps 50 years old, walking up to my left. He had red hair and a thin goatee and wore hiking clothes. Before I could hide, he spotted me and headed straight my way. When he reached me, he smiled cautiously and said, I'm afraid I'm turned around a bit. Could you direct me back to town? I gave him directions south to the spring and then onto the main stream, which he could follow west to the ranger station. He appeared relieved. I ran into someone east of here earlier who told me how to get back, but I must have made a wrong turn. Are you also heading toward town? Looking closely at the expression on his face, I seemed to pick up a sadness and anger in his personality. I don't think so, I said. I'm looking for a friend who is out here somewhere. What did the person you met look like? It was a woman with blonde hair and bright eyes, he replied. She talked rapidly. I couldn't catch her name. Who are you looking for? Charlene Billings. Is there anything else about the woman you saw that you can remember? She said something about the national forest that made me think she might be one of those searcher types that hang out around here, but I couldn't tell. She warned me to leave the valley. She told me that she had to get her gear and then she was leaving. Also, she seemed to think something was wrong out here, that everyone was in danger. She was actually very secretive. Frankly, I didn't know what she was talking about. His tone suggested he was accustomed to speaking with directness. As friendly as possible, I said. It sounds as if the person you met could have been my friend. Where did you see her exactly? He pointed toward the south and told me he had run into her about half a mile back. She had been walking alone and had headed southeast from there. I'll walk with you as far as the spring, I said. I picked up my pack, and as we walked down the hill, he asked, if that was your friend, where do you think she was going? I don't know. Into some mystical space, perhaps, looking for utopia, he was smiling cynically. I realized he was baiting me. Maybe, I said. Don't you believe in the possibility of utopia? No, of course not. It's Neolithic thinking, naive. I glanced at him, fatigue beginning to overwhelm me, trying to end the conversation. Just a difference of opinion, I guess. He laughed. No, it's fact. There's no utopia coming. Everything is getting worse out there, not better. Economically, things are swinging out of control, and eventually it will explode. Why do you say that? It's simple demographics. For most of this century, there has been a large middle class in the Western countries, a class who have promoted order and reason and carried a general faith that the economic system could work for everyone. But this faith is beginning to collapse now. You can see it everywhere. Fewer people every day now believe in the system or play by the rules. And it's all because the middle class is shrinking. Technological development is making labor valueless and splitting human culture into two groups, the haves and the have nots. Those who have investments and ownership in the world economy and those who are restricted to menial service jobs. Couple this with the failure of education, and you can see the scope of the problem.
We just talked about this the other day. The Yeah,
So
this is,
what?
well, he's just not, what's neat about that is it's what, 20 years later? When was this one written?
Yeah.
But the 98. So this was 98. So this is 23 years later, and that statement to the mainstream is the narrative. It's falling apart. People aren't following by the rules. Taxes aren't being paid. Schools are falling apart because everybody's going to these charter schools, and this tax money that goes to the public schools isn't getting. So the narrative is there, and it's
Mhm.
only gotten louder. But I think more people are seeing that that's
What needs to
progress.
happen?
That's progress. Yeah.
Yeah. That's the falling apart. It's like the breaking away of the shell, the cocoon, the thing that's holding everything together. And it's not meant to be held together. It's meant to,
Expand.
yeah, and like fall apart so it can become
Hmm.
instead of be held together. That sounds awfully cynical, I said. It's realistic. It's the truth. For most people, it takes more and more effort just to survive out there. Have you seen the surveys on stress? Tension is off the scale. Nobody feels secure, and the worst hasn't even begun yet. Population is exploding, and as technology expands even more, the distance will grow between the educated and the uneducated. That's so interesting because I feel like technology expands, that separation will decrease because the education is so available to everybody.
And the education they're teaching isn't the education that's important. So then we're getting the education necessary. We're not getting the skills that our grandparents thought we needed.
We're being taught how to think instead of what to think, and they want to teach us what to think. That's what the school system is for.
Yeah.
And the haves will control more and more of the global economy, while drugs and crime will continue to soar with the have-nots.
Hmm.
And what do you think, he continued, will happen in the underdeveloped countries? Already, much of the Middle East and Africa is in the hands of religious fundamentalists whose aim is to destroy organized civilization, which they think is a satanic empire, and replace it with some kind of perverted theocracy where religious leaders are in charge of everything and they have the sanctioned power to condemn to death those they consider heretics anywhere in the world. What kind of people would agree with this kind of butchery in the name of spirituality? Yet they are increasing every day. China still practices female infanticide, for example. Do you believe that? I'm telling you, law and order and respect for human life are on their way out. The world is degenerating into a mob mentality ruled by envy and revenge and led by shrewd charlatans, and it's probably too late to stop it. But do you know what? Nobody really cares. Nobody. The politicians won't do anything. All they care about is their personal fiefdoms and how to retain them. The world is changing too fast. No one can catch up, and that makes us just look out for number one and get whatever we can as fast as we can before it's too late. This sentiment permeates the whole of civilization and every occupational group. With that, I will pass.
He took a breath and looked at me. I had stopped on the crest of one of the hills to view the impeding sunset, and our eyes met. He seemed to realize that he had gotten carried away with with his tirade. And in that moment, he began to look deeply familiar to me. I told him my name and he responded with his, Joel Lipscomb. We looked at each other for another long moment, but he offered no indication that he knew me. Why had we met in this valley? As soon as I had formulated that last question in my mind, I knew the answer. He was voicing the vision of the fear that Williams had mentioned. Chill ran through me. This was supposed to happen. Guys got chills.
I know, right? That saying that this was supposed to happen, like I feel that like right now,
Yes.
this was supposed to happen. It's all happening perfectly. Yeah.
Fine. Divine alignment. I looked at him with a new seriousness. Do you really think things are that bad? Yes, absolutely, he replied. I'm a journalist, and you can see this attitude playing out in our profession. In the past, we at least attempted to do our job with certain standards of integrity, but no longer. It's all hype and sensationalism. No one is looking for truth anymore or trying to present it in the most accurate way. Journalists are looking for the scoop, the most outrageous perspective, every bit of dirt they can dig up. Even a particular Even if particular accusations have a logical explanation, they are reported anyway for their impact on ratings and circulation. In a world where people are numbed and distracted, the only thing that sells is the unbelievable. And the pity is this kind of journalism is self perpetuating. A young journalist looks at this situation and thinks that to survive in the business, he has to play the game. If he doesn't, he thinks he'll be left behind, ruined, which leads which is what leads to so-called investigative reports being intentionally faked. It happens all the time. We had proceeded south and we were making our way down the rocky terrain. Other occupational groups suffered from the same condition, Joel went on. God, look at attorneys. Perhaps there was a time when being an officer of the court meant something, when the participants in the process had shared a common respect for the truth, for justice, but no longer. Think about the recent celebrity trials covered by television. Lawyers now do everything they can to subvert justice intentionally, trying to convince jurors to believe the hypothetical when there is no evidence. Hypotheticals that attorneys know are lies just to get someone off. And other attorneys comment on the proceedings as though these tactics are common practice and absolutely justified under our system of law, which is not true. Under our system, everyone is entitled to a fair trial, but the lawyers are beholden to ensure fairness and correctness, not to distort the truth and undermine justice simply to get their client off at all costs. Because of television, at least we've been able to see the corrupt practices for what they represent. Simple expediency on the part of trial lawyers to enhance the reputation in order to command higher fees. The reason they're so blatant is that they think no one cares. And obviously, no one does. Everyone else is doing the same thing. We're cutting corners, maximizing short term profits instead of planning long term. Because inside, consciously or unconsciously, we don't think our success can last. And we're doing this even if we have to break the spirit of trust we have with others and advance our own interests at the expense of someone else. Pretty soon, all the subtle assumptions and agreements that hold civilization together will be totally subverted. Think what will happen once unemployment gets to a certain level in the inner cities. Crime is out of control now. Police officers aren't going to keep risking their lives for a public that doesn't notice anyway. Why find yourself on the stand twice a week getting grilled by some attorney who's not interested in the truth anyway, or worse, writhing in the pain while your lifeblood runs out on the ground in some dark alley somewhere when no one cares? Better look the other way and do your 20 years as quietly as possible. Maybe even take a few bribes on the side. And it goes on and on. What's going to stop it? He paused. I glanced back at him. I glanced back at him as we walked. I guess you think some spiritual renaissance is going to change all this, he asked. I sure hope so. He struggled over a fallen tree to catch up with me. Listen, he continued. I bought into this spirituality stuff for a while. This idea of purpose and destiny and insights. I could even see some interesting coincidences happening in my own life. But I decided it was all crazy. The human mind can imagine all sorts of silly things. We don't even realize we're doing it. When you get right down to it, all this talk of spirituality is just weird rhetoric. I started to counter his argument, but changed my mind. My intuition was to hear him out first. Yeah, I said, I guess sometimes it sounds that way. Take, for instance, the talk I've heard about this valley, he went on. That's the kind of nonsense I used to listen to. This is just a valley full of trees and bushes, like thousands of others. He put his hand on a large tree as we passed. You think this is you think this national forest is going to survive? Forget it. With the humans, with the way humans are polluting the oceans and saturating the ecosystem with man-made carcinogens and consuming paper and the other wood products, this place will become a garbage bin, like everywhere else. In fact, no one cares about trees now. How do you think the government gets away with building roads here at taxpayers' expense and then selling the timber at below market value? Or swapping the best, most beautiful areas for ruined land somewhere else just to make the developers happy? I'll go ahead and pass.
No, this is depressing. I don't like this guy.
Yeah. I know this guy so well. I know so many people like this. And I have a tendency to have some of these beliefs. I've learned my way around them, but they're they're subtle.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, it's not to say that they're true or not true. It just is. And like that's the piece is like as like the last part was when we were talking about the trees. First of all, I care about trees, so fuck off.
Fuck yeah.
And then the other piece, like this thought came to my mind of like Well, if we don't see it, then it's just going to get out of control when we're not looking, and then it'll just be unstoppable by the time we see it. And that's in regard to just, I mean, anything really. But
Yeah.
like the way he's speaking is like, but here's the thing though, is again, it's a belief. And just to be very, very clear that I am in no way, shape, or form talking about spiritual bypassing, um, and painting something that is awful into something pretty, or putting a little spiritual band-aid on top of it, or whatever the case may be. Like, no, these things are happening. That is a thing. And like I feel it in my heart. I feel it in my fucking stomach. I feel it when I think about it. Um, these are real things. What I have, like, what comes to me though is that the way to shift it isn't to fall into the same thing people have always done with protests or fighting against or whatever the case may be, because again, that's just adding fuel to the fire.
Yes.
It's hate. Fighting hate with hate amplifies the hate. It doesn't do anything. And so what can happen is we do the work to do our part instead of spending our time, energy, attention, intention to stand against what somebody is doing, or to stand against somebody, or to stand against something. Why not use our time, energy, attention, and intention to embody what we do stand for, to embody the change that we want to see in this world? And it's not fucking easy. It's not fucking easy to not fall into that space of, let me tell you how wrong you are. Let me tell you why what you're doing is bad. Let me shame you into not doing what you're doing. Let me blame you for the entirety of the world's problems, and then maybe you'll stop what you're doing.
Right.
It's super fucking easy to fall into that. It's really fucking a practice to hold that embodiment, to feel like I am doing something when I embody the peace, when I embody the love, when I go out there and hug my little desert backyard tree, when I come down from my hike after my mountain holds space for me and I hug my rock on the way down to say thank you,
Right.
to pick up the wipes that were littered at the lake. It takes work to recognize that that is the work, that that is impactful. And it takes work to not feel meaningless, to not feel like I'm not doing enough or I'm not doing anything at all. And therefore, I'm part of the problem.
I felt
I
that.
think that's it.
Felt that. And I do. I that's what I mean by it's in there, but I can't jump into the conversation anymore. I can't participate in that conversation anymore because I can see where it's part of the process. It's all regretfully it's necessary, and
Mhm.
in that I I do practice and I get that piece. Like it's not always easy to pick up that fucking piece of trash that somebody dropped and just shut up and put it in the trash can. But it's just become second nature. Like that is the practice is sitting out and meditating in the sun and enjoying the sun like that's the real peace that comes from finally being able to not embrace this conversation because 10 years ago I'd get in this conversation with him. Now I know and I'm aware of all that, but the practice is to embody
I'm done talking about the problem and I'm ready to embody the solution.
embody the solution. Yeah.
Like,
Thank you
that's
for
plain and simple. Hmm?
Thank you for reframing that because I can I and what's neat is that is what I've done. And so it's like, okay, I see where my filter has come into place because that process of standing against just doesn't fit anymore.
Mhm.
Jumping on the bandwagon of the protest just doesn't fit anymore.
Well,
I just want to be the change. I don't want to scream about the problem,
it's what created the problem that we're standing against in the first place.
right?
We become what it is we are fighting against.
Yeah.
That's
Yes.
what always happens. It's just, I mean, that's nature. You know, we embody what we are focused on.
Right.
And so we get to choose what we focus on. We get to choose what we embody. We get to choose. And it's like what I'm walking through right now and going into work tomorrow morning and having that conversation. I'm not interested in talking about all the problems. I'm interested in speaking about the solution. And here is what has come to me as far as what we can first start off with as stepping into a solution.
Yeah.
And then we can see what happens from there. But I'm not in it to replay and revisit all of the things that
Right.
brought us here. It's already done. What are we going to do going forward?
Right.
And so in that, that's again, I'm not interested in talking about the problem. I am here to embody the solution. And, and I fucking love that phrase. God damn. Um, but it like in that, like it goes so deep
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
it
All the
goes
way
back
through.
to that time when we were in Texas visiting my family and we did the microdose and I was listening to my uncle and his friend talk.
Yes.
That's it. Like they're there to talk about like it's a lot of what the last few generations are about talking about the problem. And that was needed,
Yeah.
right? And now, like, our generation and the generations around us are here to simultaneously, like, transition. Like, we're that transitionary, that transitory generation or generations where we're like, okay, now it's time to embody the solution, right? I hear you. I hear you.
You're
And
not
I'm
wrong.
not going to
I'm not trying to
require
tell you
you.
you're wrong. Yeah.
And I'm not going to require you to do anything different. We need to hear the problem. Great. And now it's time to embody the solution. And with us being that bridge, now the future generations that are coming in are the embodiment of the solution.
Yeah.
They have zero interest in talking about the fucking problem.
Right. And you
And
see
that,
that dynamic in mainstream out in the real world. Like my parents and most of my generation's screaming about the next generation coming in, and I'm just embracing this. Like, no, they've got the answer. Don't shoot them
but
down.
they're so different,
They're so different.
right? And the older generation is in that space, right? Again, because they talk about the problem. That's what they do. Right? And the newer generation just doesn't really, whatever, let's embody the solution. Let's go forward. Let's talk, like, it's not a thing. And it's also interesting at how this perception of this newer generation that they're so sensitive. No, they're not fucking sensitive. They just don't put up with being treated like shit. Good fucking work. Good fucking work at healing that shit.
Right.
No, you're not fucking sensitive. You're right on fucking track. You don't deserve to be treated like shit. You don't deserve to be overworked. You don't deserve to suffer or sacrifice. And you do deserve to speak your fucking mind and say something about it. Yes, let's heal that shit.
Yeah. Yeah.
Good work.
Fucking A. No, it's so beautiful to see and watch and to be a spectator in. I guess that is a perfect description. The bridge. That's what I've come to this place where I'm not in either category in regards to how free and how embodied they are and how stuck in the problem they are. I'm somewhere in the middle, just like, no, don't shoot him down. Let's let this happen. Let's let this happen.
Yeah, and that, I mean, it is. I feel that's what it feels like. It feels like we're a bridge of like
Wow.
carrying like that completion. Like we are completing these generational cycles. We are the generation that is completing these cycles. So they are not, they're no longer needed to be carried on. I saw this, I think it was a TikTok video or Instagram video or whatever. And it was like you had the great great grandmother like passing down this bag of baggage, right? Of emotional baggage to the great grandmother. And the great grandmother takes it and then passes it down to the grandmother. The grandmother takes it. And then the grandmother passes it down to the mother, and the mother takes it. And then the mother passes it down to the daughter, and the daughter stops. And the mother stops. No, no. Oh, I'm gonna cry. Like,
I did.
like you don't need to have this. It stops here. And this is the fucking generation that we're in. We're in the generation that stops passing down the shit. And you get to fucking walk out and live your fucking life without spending the first 50 years healing the shit from generations past.
Fuck,
Fucking beautiful.
that was good.
Yeah.
Thank you.
All right, back to the book.
What
You
were
know,
we?
light interlude, just light conversation. That's all.
Yeah, just light. Sure. No tears. You're crying, not me.
You're crying. I'm not crying. You're crying. You probably think something mystical is happening here in this valley. And why not? Everyone would love for there to be something mystical going on, especially considering the diminishing quality of life. But the fact is, there's nothing esoteric happening. We're just animals, creatures smart enough and unlucky enough to have figured out we're alive. And we're going to die without ever knowing any purpose. We can pretend all we want and we can wish all we want, but the basic existential fact remains. We can't know. I mean, that's truth. Nobody fucking knows.
Yep.
I looked back at him again. Don't you believe in any kind of spirituality? He laughed. If a god exists, he must be an exceedingly cruel monster of a god. There couldn't be a spiritual reality operating here. How could there be? Look at the world. What kind of God would design such a devastating place where children die horribly by earthquakes and senseless crimes and starvation when restaurants toss out tons of food every day?
Dude, did you see? I saw a post. I don't know if it's real, but I saw a post that uh I think it was India passed a law, a national law that the restaurants and grocers are not allowed to throw food out anymore. It all goes to a food bank.
Oh, that's amazing.
It's against the law here for it to go out anywhere but the dumpster.
Right. What the fuck?
Yeah. What the fuck is right? Sorry.
No, you don't fucking apologize. Stop it. Although, he added, perhaps that's the way it's supposed to be. Perhaps that's God's plan. Maybe the end time scholars are correct. They think life and history are all just a test of faith to see who will win salvation and who won't. A divine plan to destroy civilization in order to separate the believers from the wicked. He attempted a smile, but it quickly faded as he drifted into his own thoughts. Finally, he quickened his pace to walk up even with me. We were entering into the sage meadow again, and I could see the crow tree a quarter of a mile away. Do you know what these end times people really believe is happening? He asked. I did a study of them several years ago. They're fascinating. Not really, I said, nodding for him to go on. They study the prophecies hidden in the Bible, especially in the book of Revelation. They believe that we live in what they call the last days, the time when all the prophecies will come true. Essentially, what they think is this: history is now set up for the return of the Christ and the creation of the heavenly kingdom on earth. But
Children.
before this can occur, The earth has to suffer a series of wars, natural disasters, and other apocalyptic events predicted in the scriptures. And they know every one of these predictions, so they spend their time watching world events very closely, waiting for the next event on the timetable. What's the next event? I asked. A peace treaty in the Middle East that will allow the rebuilding of the temple in Jerusalem. Sometime after that, according to them, a massive rapture will begin among true believers, whoever they are, and they will be snatched off the face of the earth and lifted into heaven. I stopped and looked at him. They think these people will begin to disappear? Yep, that's in the Bible. Then comes the tribulation, which is a 7-year period when all hell breaks loose for whoever is left on earth. Apparently, everything is expected to fall apart. Giant earthquakes destroy the economy, ocean levels destroy many cities, plus rioting and crime and the rest of it. And then a politician emerges, probably in Europe, who offers a plan to pull things back together if, of course, he's set up with supreme power. This includes a centralized electronic economy, which coordinates commerce in most parts of the world. To participate in this economy, however, and take advantage of the automation, one has to swear allegiance to this leader and have a chip implanted in one's hand through which all economic interactions are documented. There are so many sci-fi movies that like have just played that out. It's crazy. This Antichrist at first protects Israel and facilitates a peace treaty, then attacks later, starting a world war that ultimately involves the Islamic nations, Russia, and finally China. According to the prophecies, just as Israel is about to fall, the angels of God swoop down and win the war, installing a spiritual utopia that lasts 1,000 years. He cleared his throat and looked at me. Walk through a religious bookstore sometime and look around. There are commentaries and novels about these prophecies everywhere, and more coming out all the time. Do you think these end times scholars are correct? He shook his head. I don't think so. The only prophecy that's being played out in this world is man's greed and corruption. Some dictator might rise up and take over, but it will be because he saw a way to take advantage of the chaos. Do you think this will happen? I don't know, but I'll tell you one thing. If the collapse of middle class continues and the poor get poorer and the inner cities get more crime infested and spread into the suburbs, and then on top of that, we experience, say, a series of big natural disasters and the whole economy crashes for a while, COVID, we'll have bands of hungry marauders preying on the masses and total panic everywhere. COVID. In the face of this kind of violence, if someone comes along and proposes a way to save us, to straighten things out, asking only that we surrender some civil liberties, I have no doubt that we'll do it. We, huh?
Oh yeah, COVID, you're right.
I mean, is that it was the chaos, it was the fall of the economy, it was like all of that. And that's not to say that that's the one that they're talking about and that there's not going to be another one or something else.
Coming, yeah.
But it was the entire world went into a panic. The entire world,
Yeah.
not just a country,
Oh,
the world.
yeah.
The world shut down. And of course, everybody went into a panic because their distractions got taken away and they were forced to be by themselves. Some, for the very first time ever, to look at themselves. It was like the dark night of the soul for the world. It was like the difficult fucking psychedelic journey for the world.
Yep. Yep.
We stopped and drank some water from my canteen. 50 yards ahead was the crow tree. I perked up. Far in the background, I could detect the faint dissonance of the hum. Joel's eyes squinted in concentration, watching me closely. What are you hearing? I turned around and faced him. It's a strange noise, the hum we've been perceiving. I think it may be some kind of experiment going on in the valley. What kind of experiment? Who's conducting it? Why can't I hear it? I was about to tell him more when we were interrupted by another sound. We listened carefully. That's a vehicle, I said. Two more gray Jeeps were approaching from the west and heading toward us. We ran behind a patch of tall briars and hid, and they passed within 100 yards of us. Within 100 yards without stopping, heading southeast along the same path the earlier Jeep had followed. I don't like this, Joel said. Who was that? Well, it's not the Forest Service, and no one else is supposed to be driving out in here. I think it must be the people involved with the experiment. He looked horrified. If you want, I said, you can take a more direct route back to town. Just head southwest toward the ridge in the distance. You'll run right into the stream about 3/4 of a mile, and you can follow it west into town from there. I think you can arrive before it gets too dark. You're not coming? Not now. I'm going directly south to the stream and wait a while for my friends. He tensed his forehead. Those people couldn't be conducting an experiment without someone in the Forest Service knowing about it. I know. You don't think you can do anything about this, do you? This is something big. I didn't respond. A pang of anxiety rushed through me. He listened for a moment and then moved past me into the valley, walking quickly. He looked back once and shook his head. I watched him until he crossed the meadow and disappeared into the forest on the other side. Then I hurriedly walked toward the south, thinking again of Charlene. What had she been doing out here? Where was she going? I had no answers. That I'll pass.
Pushing hard, I reached the stream in about 30 minutes. The sun was now completely hidden by the band of clouds at the western horizon, and the twilight cast the woods in an ominous gray tones. I was tired and dirty. I knew that listening to Joel and seeing the Jeeps had affected my mood severely. Perhaps I had enough evidence now to go to the authorities. Perhaps that way I could help Charlene most. Several options danced through my head, all rationalizing my return to town. Because the woods on both sides of the stream were thin, I decided to wade across and make my way into the thicker forest on the other side, although I knew the area was private property. Once across, I stopped abruptly, hearing another Jeep, then broke into a run. 50 feet ahead, the land rose quickly into a knob of boulders and outcroppings, 20 feet high. Climbing quickly, I reached the top and accelerated my pace, then leaped upon a pile of large rocks, intending to jump them quickly to the other side. When my foot hit the topmost rock, a huge stone rolled forward, throwing my feet out from underneath me, starting the whole pile moving. I bounced one I bounced once on my hip and landed in a small gully, the pile still tumbling my way. Several of the rocks, each 2 or 3 feet in diameter, were careening down, coming squarely for my chest. I had time to roll onto my left side and raise my arms, but I knew I couldn't get out of the way. Then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw a wispy white form moving in front of my body. Simultaneously, an unusual knowing came over me that the huge rocks would somehow miss. I closed my eyes and heard them crash on both sides. Slowly, I opened my eyes and peered through the dust, wiping the dirt and rock chips away from my face. The rocks were laying neatly beside me. How had that happened? What was that white form? For a moment, I looked around the scene, and then behind one of the rocks, I saw a slight movement. A small bobcat cub eased around and looked directly into my eyes. I knew it was big enough to have run away, but it was lingering, looking at me. The rising sound of the approaching vehicle finally sent the bobcat scampering into the woods. I jumped to my feet and ran several more steps before landing awkwardly on another rock. A bolt of throbbing pain raced through my whole leg as my left foot gave away. I fell to the ground and crawled the last 2 yards into the trees. I rolled around behind a huge oak as the vehicle pulled up to the stream, slowed for a few minutes, then raced away again toward the southeast. My heart pounding, I sat up and pulled off my boots to inspect the ankle. I was already beginning to swell. Why this? I thought, as I slid around to stretch out my leg. I observed a woman staring at me from about 30 feet away. I froze as she walked toward me. Are you all right? She asked. her voice concerned but wary. She was a tall black woman, perhaps 40, dressed in loose-fitting sweat clothes and tennis shoes. Strands of dark hair had pulled out of her ponytail and dangled in the breeze above her temples. In her hand was a small green knapsack. I was sitting over there and saw you fall, she said. I am a doctor. Do you want me to take a look? I appreciate that. I'd appreciate that, I said dizzily, not believing the coincidence. She knelt down beside me and moved the foot gently, at the same time surveying the area toward the creek. Are you out here alone? I told her briefly about looking for Charlene, but left out everything else. She said she had seen no one of that description. As she talked, finally introducing herself as Maya Ponder, I became convinced that she was completely trustworthy. I told her my name and where I lived. When I finished, she said, I am from Asheville, although I have a health center with a partner a few miles south of here. It's new. We also own 40 acres of the valley right here that joins the national forest. She pointed to the area where we were sitting, and another 40 acres up the ridge to the south. I unzipped a pocket on my hiking pack and pulled out my canteen. Would you like some water? I asked. No, thanks. I have some. She reached inside her own pack, retrieved the canteen, and opened the top. But instead of drinking, she soaked a small towel and wrapped my foot, an action that made me grimace in pain. Turning and looking into my eyes, she said, You've definitely sprained this ankle. How badly? I asked. She hesitated. What do you think? I don't know. Let me try to walk on it. I attempted to stand, but she stopped me. Wait a minute, she said. Before you try to walk, analyze your attitude. How badly do you think you are hurt? What do you mean? I mean that very often your recuperation time depends on what you think, not me. I looked down at the ankle. I think it could be pretty bad. If it is, I'll have to get back to town somehow. What then? I don't know. If I can't walk, I may have to go find someone else to look for Charlene. Do you have any idea why this accident happened now? Not really. Why does that matter? Because, again, very often your attitude about why an accident or illness has happened has an effect on your recuperation. I looked at her closely, well aware that I was resisting. Part of me felt as though I didn't have time for this discussion right now. It seemed too self involved for the situation. Although the hum had ceased, I had to assume that the experiment was continuing. Everything felt too dangerous, and it was almost dark. And Charlene could be in terrible trouble for all I knew. I was also aware of a deep sense of guilt toward Maya. Why would I feel guilty? I tried to shake off the emotion. What kind of doctor are you? I asked, sipping some water. She smiled, and for the first time I saw her energy lift. She had decided to trust me too. Permit me to tell you about the kind of medicine I practice, she said. Medicine is changing, and changing rapidly. We don't think of the body as a machine anymore, with parts that eventually wear out and have to be fixed or replaced. We are beginning to understand that the health of the body is determined to a great degree by our mental processes. What we think of life, and especially of ourselves, at both the conscious and unconscious levels. This represents a fundamental shift. Under the old method, the doctor was the expert, the healer, and the patient was the passive recipient, hoping the doctor would have all the answers. But we now know that the inner attitude of the patient is crucial. A key factor is fear and stress, and the way we handle it. Sometimes the fear is conscious, but very often we repress it entirely. This is the brave, macho attitude. Deny the problem, push it away, conjure up our heroic agenda. If we take this attitude, then the fear continues to eat at us unconsciously. Adopting a positive outlook is very important in staying healthy. but we have to engage in the attitude in full awareness, using love, not macho, for this attitude to be completely effective. What I believe is that our unspoken fears create blocks or crimps in the body's energy flow. And it's these blocks that ultimately result in the problems. The fears keep manifesting in ever greater degrees until we deal with them. Physical problems are the last step. Ideally, these blocks would be dealt with early in a preventative way before illness develops. Fuck, I love that. So you
Yeah.
think all illness can ultimately be prevented or cured? Yes. I'm sure we will have longer or shorter lifespans. That's probably up to the creator, but we don't have to be sick and we don't have to be the victim of so many accidents. So you think this applies to an accident like my sprain as well as to illness? She smiled. Yes, in most cases. I was confused. Look, I don't have time for this right now. I'm really worried about my friend. I've got to do something. I know, but I have a hunch this conversation won't take long. If you rush by and disregard what I'm saying, you may miss the meaning of what is obviously quite a coincidence here. She looked at me to see whether I had picked up on her reference to the manuscript. Dope. You're aware of the insights? I asked. She nodded. What exactly do you suggest I do? Well, the technique I've had great success with is this. First, we try to remember the nature of your thoughts just prior to the health problem. In your case, the sprain. What were you thinking? What is the fear this problem is revealing to you? Wow. I thought for a moment, then said, I felt afraid, ambivalent. The situation here in this valley seems so much more sinister than I thought. I didn't feel as though I could handle it. On the other hand, I knew Charlene might need help. I was confused and torn over what to do. So you sprained your ankle. I leaned toward her. Are you saying that I sabotaged myself so I wouldn't have to take action? Isn't that too simple? That's for you to say, not me. But very often, it is simple. Besides, the most important thing is not to spend time defending or proving. Just play with it. Try to remember everything you can about the health problem, about where the health problem came from. Explore for yourself. How do I do that? You have to calm your mind and receive this information. Intuitively? Intuitively, prayerfully, however you conceive the process. I resist again, not sure whether I should relax into my clear mind. Finally, I closed my eyes for a moment. I closed my eyes, and for a moment my thoughts ceased. But then a succession of memories of Will and the day's events intruded. I let them go by and I cleared my mind again. Immediately, I saw a sense of my mind at age 10, limping away from a touch football game, well aware that I was faking the injury. That's right, I thought. I used to fake sprains to avoid having to perform under pressure. I had forgotten all about this. I realized later that I began to actually hurt the ankle frequently in all kinds of situations. As I pondered the memory, another flash of recollection entered my mind. A cloudy scene of myself in another time, feeling cocky, confident, impulsive. And then, as I worked in a dark, candlelit room, the door crashed in and I was dragged away in terror. I will pass.
I think maybe we
Market,
pause. Yeah.
market.
Yeah, because we still have quite a
Yeah.
bit.
Uh-oh. Where did I do that? Oh, in terror? Yeah.
Yes, page 59 is what I have here.
Yeah, page 59. Cool. That was fucking epic. God damn this book.
I
The
know.
series.
I know when I was reading yesterday, it was so hard to not keep going.
I bet. I bet.
But instead I'm back to reading my book on dreams, The Art of Dreaming.
Oh, nice.
Um I put it down for a while and um and then with the nightmares and stuff. And then yesterday when I wanted to read some more of Celestine Prophecy, I was like, oh, what do I want to read? What do I want to read? And then that book came to my mind. So I've been reading that the last couple days again.
Nice.
And it's just so interesting um to just explore because it's the Yaqui Native American tradition. And just to explore the realms of like of the dream world and the descriptions and understanding and all of that. And every time too I start reading that book, then my dreams start coming and it's the thing.
Nice.
What happens. Yeah.
Cool. Right on. Well, thank you for joining us this evening as we dig into our souls. Fucking book, man.
It is. It's so, I mean, right on time.
Yeah.
Right on time. Like, and that was so perfect. Even just that phrase to walk me through tomorrow. Like, I'm not here to talk about the problem. I'm here to embody the solution. And really just staying focused on that. And just, gosh, I just have so much reverence and honor for myself, like a newfound depth of how to honor myself with pure presence, right? Fucking grace. Fucking grace. And so that pure presence, right? That pure presence brought me back to identifying these things that I hadn't given my awareness to, my presence to regarding myself. And so, yeah, just
Well, I wish you luck tomorrow, and I will send you some prayers tonight.
thank you, babe.
Gotcha.
And I'm super fucking proud of you. Warrior level shit happening all over the place.